and intro music. It was meant that way. So welcome back to the Steel Forum. We've been away for a little bit. It turns out one of my hard drives crashed, and the videos, because they're massive, aren't backed up the same way that some of our other stuff is. So I gotta make us some new stuff. But I figured, in the words of Bill O'Reilly, we'll do it live. Do it live. And it was particular because, or it was particularly annoying, or particularly necessary because of something that happened to us the other day. And on that, I will introduce my friend, the fluffernutter to my peanut butter, Matthew Hand.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
So what's the thing that happened the other day?
It's
been a busy week.
You've got it in front of you.
So we're talking about the program we received for the NASCC coming up in Atlanta in April.
Yeah, that's it. And
I opened it up, and the first thing I do is there's a whole schedule here. It's just kind of hold it up. A whole schedule, all these different sessions throughout all the different days, and they organize it in accordance to generally who's behind it. So if it's AISC, if it's architectural people, if it's the engineering group, or NISD, and there's even a section for the bridge folks. And NISD is running 13 sessions over the course of the 3 days, and 2 of them have to do with getting the most out of your offshore detailing.
Yeah, come on. Like, we've fought so hard. And I mean, me personally, like I've actually had meetings with the people who schedule these sessions and said, listen, we need more sessions for detailers. And their idea of a session for detailing is how to take your detailing offshore successfully. Let me give you a hint right off the bat. The best way, the most successful way to write a contract for offshore detailing is to not to. Just don't. If you don't have an absolutely established record with a detailer that's overseas, don't. Just time and again, I don't know why this is still a thing, right? Is it because we don't have enough capacity domestically, whatever else? But the AISC, the American Institute of Steel Construction, should not be promoting this, right?
Right.
And we're AISC members. We try to support them. We try to give them money, but the NISD is absolutely complicit in this, right? If you want to talk about a lack of skilled detailers in the United States, there is one organization that is to blame for that. It's the NISD. It's supposed to be their responsibility, but they've abdicated it.
Right. And just to give you these titles, because it really threw me as I was flipping through these. So, detailing contracts with your domestic and offshore partners. What's in yours?
Not enough.
Yeah. And the second one, this is managing offshore detailing. Now, yeah, if you're going to use offshore detailing, you sure are going to need to manage it. I'll give you that. But what are we doing?
Well, here's the thing, right off the bat. What's in your contract with an offshore detail? It might as well be nothing, because you can take that contract and you can throw it right out the window. They're not subject to our laws. And even if they're legally subject, if you can, work out your international law degree and find a way to make them, technically subject, good luck enforcing it, We have enough time enforcing a valid lien in the United States against somebody that's one county over, and you're going to try to use your contract to beat somebody that's, 2,000 miles away over the head with it? Good luck.
Yeah.
And here's the
We
thing.
encountered that when we worked in-house for a fabricator. They used an overseas detailer, and that was exactly what happened.
Right.
They paid for shoddy work. They got what they paid for, and then there was no dealing with a back charge. There was no getting your money back. There was no getting corrections done. It was just, well, hey, Matt, we farmed this out. It didn't pan out. I need you to draw this job right away. So I guess you're going to get to draw it anyway.
Well, and the thing is, I don't like to jump up and down on, offshore detailers just because, right? But there is absolutely a problem there, definitively. And in my life, okay, I've received hundreds and hundreds of emails from offshore detailing companies asking us to let them quote our work, okay? And every time there are drastic errors in just the composition of the email. If you can't get your sales stuff right, if you can't make me believe that you're every bit as capable of communicating with your best foot forward, why am I supposed to believe that I'm not going to have communication problems with you or other problems with you when that technical language, the nuts and bolts of it, literally comes into play?
Right. When you're talking about the sales pitch, which is just a form letter with your name in the beginning of it, how is it that they couldn't even be bothered to get that to look right?
Right.
And now how am I supposed to expect you to adhere to our shop standards?
Right. If you can't be bothered to find an American partner who will proofread your email before you send it for your sales calls, then I can't trust you with these more complex things. I need you as a fabricator. I need you to be able to write an RFI that I can just hit the forward button on. You know what I mean? Like I need the language of my approval drawings to every time be professional, to be clear. If you're asking a question, American detailers who have spent their entire life speaking English and have spent their lives in construction still have difficulty composing an RFI in a manner that we find to be acceptable.
Right. Now take that and have somebody do it where English is not their first language.
Right. And we're a little bit off topic because what I really wanted to talk about is the betrayal, right, of the AISC and the NISD, particularly the NISD. They're doing nothing useful.
Well, they're giving the presentations.
Right. But who, right? Of all of the detailers that we work with, exactly one of them is an active member of the NISD, right? One. And one. It was detailing for steel construction, which is supposed to be a work together project between the NISD and the AISC. That book has not changed since you started to learn detailing. It's the same book.
Yeah.
Are you telling me that
it's still the third edition, right? That's still the latest? Or have they gotten any more?
Are you telling me in the third year there was nothing that you could think of to rewrite a new book for how to detail steel? Maybe there have been changes in the last 10 years that are important.
10 years. Keep going if you're going back to my beginnings.
Right. But they're spending their time instead talking about how to best protect yourself from offshore detailers. Maybe the fact that that's the topic you need to talk about should give you a clue not to be using them in the first place.
Right. You know what I want to see if that's what they're going to do? I want to see the outrage and have what happens when you've got offshore architects and offshore engineers, or if you're going to how to buy your steel from China, getting the most from the trade war. Where's that?
Right. Right.
Why
Good
is it
luck.
just detailers that they're perfectly willing to throw under the bus and ship offshore?
Yeah, it's it's ridiculous because this is and I mean the American economy, right? This is the classic kind of job that needs to exist and needs to be pushed. It doesn't require a college degree. You can do it on the spot. It pays well. You know, if you find the right company, there's good benefits to it. There's always potential for it. As a qualified steel detailer, you can go to any city in the United States of America and you can find a job. And not just find a job, you can pick the job, right?
Yep.
It's not, you know, if you go out there as a guy with 10 years experience, even 5 years experience, the companies, yes, I mean, technically they're interviewing you, but just as much, you're interviewing them. You could pick your ticket. There are so many.
A lot of them will pay relocation expenses, or telecommuting has become a thing. You can work from home just like we have all set up.
Right.
You don't even have to move anymore. You can live wherever you want so long as there's an internet line that runs by the house, and you can work from anywhere.
Yeah, all over the place, right? The AISC needs to realize who it is that they represent, or who they should be representing, and they're lost. They've got to be lost, right? The detailing for steel construction, the book, is not in any way a comprehensive or modern guide to detailing. It's not. We have problems all the time with fabricators calling us and saying, "Oh, well, you didn't dimension it the way that I like, so you dimensioned it wrong. You drew this wrong." And there's no standard for me to go to and say, "Look, this is it. This is the base way that this is detailed." Now, I can tell them I've detailed it that way for hundreds of different people, 100 different times, and it's never been a problem before. But they
don't
never,
want to hear it.
They never believe you, right?
Right.
They just think you're full of it. And instead of spending their time improving detailing, they're telling you how to go get it offshore. That's ridiculous. Ridiculous. Well, and there's let's take a look at a recent tragedy, right? We had the Hard Rock Cafe collapse. Okay. Now, I don't know who did the detailing. I don't know if it was offshore. I'm not saying that, right? But it indicates the importance that a detailer can play in these situations. A detailer that knew what they were doing. I mean, every detailer that I've showed the design drawings from that building to go, "Whoa, that's ridiculous." I would have said something, right? If those drawings had come before us and they said, "Draw this building," I would have thrown up so many red flags before ever releasing a piece of steel for that building that if they continued going forward, it was completely and utterly inexcusable. Now, it is inexcusable, right? No matter what. People died because of negligence, right? And there's no way to look at the videos and the drawings of that building and not scream that not only was a person negligent, several people were negligent in that construction. And I guarantee you that a good detailer, a qualified detailer who gives a flying about what is going on, would have caught that problem, right? We see it all the time. It shouldn't be our job, but it consistently is. We find design flaws in buildings and we bring them to the attention of the design. We could build it the way that they show, but it would be wrong, it would be unsafe, and it's our responsibility not to do it that way. Unacceptable.
Right. We're that last line of defense between stupidity becoming reality. And you have to have some experience, you have to have some knowledge and some training. And you don't see that, at least not in my experience, with hardly anyone that you work with overseas. And I don't have a lot of firsthand experience with working with people overseas, but I do have some, and I've got plenty of secondhand experiences that have been shared between myself and other detailers and fabricators. And we've had fabricators that have worked with us. They liked our quality of work. They got a price from an offshore detailer, and they went, oh, well, I mean, this is basically free. I've got to do it for this. So they go ahead and they got what they paid for. And within a year, they were back to us. And hey, I'd like you to quote me again. It didn't work out. No fooling.
Right. And I mean, it's almost a freaking trope at this point. You go to the conferences, and fabricators, the ones who have been through it, they say it almost in a whisper tone. Do you offshore any of your stuff? And they're so relieved, when you're like, no, it's all in house.
You start talking with a fabricator that's worked with overseas detailers, and a lot of times they get that 1,000-yard stare.
Yep. You can see just the trauma in their eyes.
They're just reliving everything that's gone wrong.
Yeah. And people will tell you, right, and detailers tend to be a conservative bunch politically, right? And they'll tell you that capitalism can solve all problems, okay? If supply and demand was allowed to work, right? If we refused as an industry to send this stuff offshore, detailers would come into existence. The pay would go up, the demand would go up, and then all of a sudden you start finding more detailers.
Right.
We're not limited by finding people who want to do this work. We're limited by the fact that we can't attract them because we're trying to compete with people who don't have the same requirements that we do. So I can't go and pay people as much as I need to get them to come along. You know what I mean? It's
right.
And of all the things,
if you want to work a minimum wage job, there's alternatives to detailing. So that's not going to fly. That's why you have to be able to get people into that marketplace, and having a fair level playing field of, okay, everybody's got to deal with the same economics in this country. That's the only way you're going to do that.
Yeah. It's not malice, it's not protectionism, it's historic results. If you want to protect yourself and you want to protect the name that you put on the front of your buildings, don't do it. There are too many risks. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't more than a few domestic detailers who suck. I know there are.
We've worked with a few of them.
Right? But with that, and because we're talking about contracts here, when you write a contract with a domestic detailer, it can be enforced. Right? You know what it takes to form a company. Right? You've got to have a DBA. You have to have a tech. All of this stuff are little hurdles that you have to get through, and they all make a little bit of a difference. Whereas, I mean, offshore, they can have one company, they can call it 35 different names and give you invoices under all of them. If you don't like the detailing, they'll just rename themselves and come back at you with a new salesperson.
Right.
And we're supposed to be excited. We're supposed to feel safe because of some contract with them. No.
Right, and they all have this advertisement to them too. Like, we've got 500 SDS and Tekla stations, or several hundred stations. It's like, really, you don't You don't see that with any American companies, not that I'm aware of, that have hundreds of stations.
Yeah, there are a few, right? They've been there for 40 years. Most of them had site licenses, so now, poof, you can afford it. But it takes a
You're
little
not
bit of time
paying
to grow.
the tab on everyone. Right. You need, like you say, you need time to grow. So you don't see that, but you see these offshore companies, and they've all got that. They all make that claim. And I know, at least for a while, SDS started to try to fight that with that whole legal thing where they, had the code in there. But I don't think at the time they did a very good job of trying to get that out. Plus, you're just trying to deal with software piracy. That's different. People's views on software piracy is very different than their views on using overseas labor.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that unless a fabricator is paying for SDS2 themselves or have been very well schooled about that, they don't care if their offshore detailing is using pirate software.
Right, as long as it doesn't bite them.
Right. Now, the software companies are trying to make the argument that, hey, at any moment, that company could be shut down because they're using pirate software. Yeah, well, that's true of any of those companies for a whole range of reasons.
Right. Businesses die every day.
Yeah, you get upside down on a project with them, you pay them too much, and they look at the books and say, well, it's going to cost me $10,000 to finish, but he only owes me $3,000. I guess I'll stop answering my phone. Real easy, right? Like, what are you going to do? Drive over there and give him a hard time? No. You're going to sue him? No. You have nothing. And that's outside of the ethical arguments, right, of buy American, right? Because we're from Rochester. So we know how incredibly difficult it is to get people to buy American, despite it being in their best interests, right? Like, Rochester, New York, if you don't know, is the home of Kodak. It was invented here, built here, the film was made here, and you'd go to Walmart down the street and you'd see Becky buying 10 freaking rolls of Fuji film. Her brother works at Kodak. I don't understand.
Save that nickel.
Yeah. And then, Kodak closes and they're all talking about, whoever could have predicted this? Well, I could have.
Yeah.
They pull up in their Nissan and talk about the degradation of the American economy. You don't say. Yikes. Oy.
Right. And the big complaint for years has been, well, we stopped making things here. Well, okay, so we don't make things, we perform services here. Well, now we're trying to offshore our services? At what point does a person decide, I'm going to have a building built? So I'm going to call up China and I'm going to hire an architect and an engineer who will design it. And then they're going to hire an Indian detailer to draw it. And then they're going to get a Pakistani or Turkish fabricator to have the foundry make the steel, fabricate the steel, and ship it over here. And then what? We're going to have illegal immigrants put it up? Let's just dodge the rules at every step?
Right. Well, and you ask them, well, why do you think it's not okay to buy Chinese steel? Well, they don't have the same quality standards. You don't say, right? Well, then why don't you inspect it when it gets here? Well, as soon as you do that, if you inspect it once it gets to the States, you lose all the savings. You don't say, right? Like, it turns out a quality product costs more to generate, regardless of the economics. And I guess that's one of the things I've never understood, right? Why, if any of these offshore companies would have built a reputation for themselves. Yes, I know offshoring is terrible, except these guys, right? This firm does it differently. They really have solid checking. for every project. Their people really do have experience, and you don't have to worry about these problems with them. I've never seen it. Maybe it exists. I haven't even heard of it. I've never heard a fabricator say, yeah, well, we used this offshore company and everything went great. We didn't have any trouble.
No, that's a phrase I've never actually heard either.
Yeah,
and I'm trying to go back and think if maybe I'd come up with one exception, but I can't come up with even one.
I've seen details that were an acceptable first try from a junior detailer, right, before it gets to...
So, if we were to implement the same sort of cost-cutting measures, so imagine this, we're going to quote a job, we'll draw it, once it goes for approval, that's the end of it, we're not going to check it. So if we can shave checking off from our price, then, we can knock 20-30% off the top.
Well, it's worse than that, right?
Does that help?
Instead of our, detailers with experience, we'll take our most junior detailers who have, 2 years of training,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and say, all right, you're on your own. Let me know when you got that submittal together. That's kind of what you see.
And please also write all of the RFIs.
Right. I that's the big difference, right, between the junior and the qualified detailer, are the little idiosyncrasies, right, where, one of our junior guys will come to us and say, hey, I saw this, and it doesn't make any sense. Well, a senior person understands the building, right? All right, let's go take a look at the architectural drawings and find out what's going on there. And, oh, you see this? Here's the soffit, and we got to stay underneath that, and if you move the bracing, it's going to stick out of there. All of that stuff. It's not happening, right? If all we did was look at the structural drawings, and deck and joist detailers are also notorious for this. Every time there's a piece of information that's not blatantly obvious on the contract drawings, RFI or cloud.
Clouds. Oh man, I have seen so many joist and deck drawings that just look like a form. It looks like a 1040 form, where it's just check all these different boxes and fill this out and fill that out, and they've also got blanket notes on them that basically say, if you don't answer all of these questions, we're just going to park your job and you lose your place in line, and we'll get back to you in 6 months to resume the job when you get around to answering. And none of that would fly for us. Yep. Absolutely none of it.
Well, and there's other stuff, right? If one of our customers calls us, I'm having a trouble with an inspector. He's saying we need X, right? I have that answer for him, right? And I have it now, okay? Here's the standard for tightening that. Here's, why snug tight is okay. Here's, you can't leave your bolts out like that. You got to bring them back. They're no good anymore, or whatever else. It's not the first part of our job. The easiest part is to produce the drawings. There is so much more to it than just inputting the dimensional requirements of the building and typing in the right material size. That's not it.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into everything, especially, you start making changes as things go on. Oh, well, we've just got to shift some beams around. That's not a big idea, is it? Well, it depends. Do they conflict now? Just because you wrote a new dimension on the drawing doesn't mean that's all going to work out. So, even when you go to quote that, like we had a change on a job. How many times
do we get a project that if we continued to just ask questions because of the designer's stupidity, would we never, ever, ever get to build that project? At some point, you guys come to me and say, they've said this and they've said this. Those can't both be. So we need somebody to just make a decision. And it's okay, this is the decision. Whereas if we waited another day and issued another RFI, it's never ever going to get done. We've got that tin building job, right, with Jason.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
The architect refuses to do their work. Okay. That's not our problem. It's not our fabricator's problem, except it is for both of it. Because that fabricator's got to listen to that GC who's holding on to his checkbook like a freaking vice grip, right? And says, I need the steel. They don't want to hear, right? They can't. They cannot hear that, well, we issued an RFI and the answer that we got was nonsense or incomplete. The words coordinate with other trades, that's why you're an architect. That was the whole point of you making drawings. So everybody's on the same literal page.
Yep. That's
Produce
basically
all of the
definition
information.
of their job is to coordinate the other trades.
Right. Right. They don't have to be an expert in all of it, but they're supposed to know about all of it. Take all the information from the different people, put it together into some form of communication document. We call them drawings. And then give us the information based on it so that we can, in the end, produce steel. I don't know. How is it always the steel guy? How is it always the steel guy who's responsible? Why is it the window manufacturer's responsible? We're just going to put our steel up where we think it goes. You better make your windows right. Good luck.
You know how many times we've had to deal with projects where they put the wall in the wrong place, so we have to either make our beams longer or shorter?
Every single we had a
Knock the wall
project
down and do it over again right. How about that? But that's never the answer. We had a school, I remember this, had a school where they put the walls halfway over our anchor bolt patterns so they covered up all the base plates so they couldn't erect the columns when they came back to do it. They were all in the wrong spot.
We had this project, right? It's basically a hip and valley stair. Okay, the stringers weren't straight, they weren't parallel, they weren't even ridiculous. Okay, and we go through, we get the fabrication drawings ready, and then they tell us, well, the stud guy already put up his wall, and he put it off. It's up wrong by about
Now I know what you're talking about.
a degree and a half. How quickly can you fix the fabrication drawings? Good luck. It's gonna take you a while. All right, so if I see a couple people are in the chat. If you're in the chat, say hello so we know who the heck is listening. I'm sure there's probably at least one offshore detailer just fuming right now about all the ways that we're wrong about this.
Or they're smiling because the American detailers evidently don't have their act together and can't keep them out.
Right. Well, and that's supposed to be what the NISD is, right? It's all the detailers basically coming together and working towards the similar goals that are good for detailing in general. But they haven't done it for years and years and years and years. When was the last time they produced a document that you've read?
Not since that third edition. I honestly, I would be interested to know what the demographic is of their membership, because how many NISD people do you specifically know? You said one before, right?
One. I know
of one former person, and I mean, anyone else that I may know, they don't make it known in any way to me that they're NISD types. So I have to wonder, did they kind of get overrun? Is it possible that overseas detailers have been joining up with them thinking, hey, this is my in, this is how I get on projects, and American detailers have looked at the NISD and said, this is garbage, I'm not paying for it, and it's just been overtaken?
Well, I mean, it takes you to the NISD certification program, right? Quote unquote certified detailers. Now, that's something that I would have loved to do for the right reasons, but none of those right reasons exist. And the process to do it is ridiculous, right? You're supposed to pay a fee. and then you take a test, an open book test, based on nothing. There's no sample questions. There's no, here's the scope of what we expect to question you about. Here's the type of questions. There's no proctors. So if you want to take the test, you have to go down to your library and ask, hey, do you guys proctor tests? No, I'm not going to do that, right? If it's an open book test, figure out a better way, right? Like, ask the questions and see if I can come up with the answers. That's it. That's all you got to do. You could do it over the friggin' internet, right? Like we do a job interview, right?
Well, and I mean, if it's open book, what books? Do I need the AISC manual? Do I need to have the seismic book with me? Do I need the detailing manual with me? Do I need all of those AISC design guides with me? Which books?
Right. And how deep into design are you going to ask me? Are you going to ask me questions about bridges? Are you going to ask me questions about designing seismic connections? Or are you going to ask
stairs,
me...
misc metals, things
right,
like that?
Or are you going to ask me how many bolt rows do I need to support a W16 by 26 that's spanning 25 feet? Right?
Right. So really the only way to prepare is to just try it.
Right.
Pay the money, take the test, and see what happens. There are probably people that have been detailing for 10 years or more that may fail that test. We have no idea what it takes to pass or fail it.
Yeah. And I'm not going to, right? I'm not going to subject myself to that, right? Here, come take a test. We're not going to give you any of the guidelines for what this test is going to be about. Come on. Now,
and that's for certification. That's not even the requirement for membership. So the requirement for membership is the same as the requirement for membership in the AISC. A little bit of money.
Right. Right.
Beyond
and
that,
we give our money to AISC because, we need them to keep doing the research that they're doing. But what is the NISD doing? Right? They're not, lobbying. They're not presenting better information for us. They're not giving us guidelines for the future. They haven't adapted their practices or their documentation for the fact that a small percentage of detailers now are using 3D modeling programs. Have you heard of them? I mean, you look at it, you read Detailing for Steel Construction and not tell me that book was written for a different generation. Not a different, couple years. An entirely different generation of detailing requirements. And it's not easy, right? I've sat down several times and told myself, all right, I'm going to write down how to do this. And the amount of forks and branches that detailing goes off to, the amount of exceptions, just try to write yourself a procedure for how to check a column. By the time you're done, you have so many if statements that the freaking tree has 1,000 leaves on it.
Well, and they've got that detailing training course that they have you can take online.
Started on that.
And I've talked with some other detailing companies, and they said, well, what we do is when we hire somebody new, we throw them at that and let them work on that for a week. And if they've decided to continue working for us after that week, then we'll give them real training.
I don't think I would have made it through it.
So that's what they do to thin the herd out of people that are like, this is just, I can't even stick with this.
Right. If you can't stand, 8 hours a day of boredom for a solid week, maybe you're not meant to be a detailer. And even then, you take somebody out of those.
It doesn't make you a fully trained detailer.
It doesn't even make you a minorly. I couldn't give you a building with 4 beams and 4 columns and expect you to turn around and give me details for it after that training course. Right. You would not get there, right?
Yeah, we've put at least one person through that course just to see how it went, kind of for the same reason. It was, we didn't really have time at that point to train, but we wanted to do something. So we said, let's give this a shot.
Right.
And
the information is useful, and that's that it's definitely useful, but it's in no way anywhere close to comprehensive.
no, it's more along the lines of, this is a beam. It is a beam because it resists load in this direction. These are flanges on a wide flange. This is how a channel looks. It explains enough to get you started on your first day of work as a brand new intern detailer, basically.
Yeah.
That's not training. That's like a Walmart orientation video. Here's how to run your cash register.
Yeah. I mean, this one of the simplest tasks, one of my most hated, but one of the simplest tasks in detailing, right? Detail a loose lintel. Okay. Try to write down the process for detailing a loose lintel. Good. Now, in a great world, right, it's go to the architectural floor plan, identify the walls that require lintels based on the lintel schedule that's in the structural drawings, look for the masonry opening, give it on the plan, and select the lintel. Right?
For bearing and
right.
all the
Right. Follow, but then you start to get into the if statements, right? What if there's another window that's real close to it, right? What if you smack into some structural steel? What if there's an air gap and it covers an 8-inch brick, and the lintel schedule covers a 4-inch or an 8-inch block, and it covers 4-inch brick, but it doesn't cover the two of them with an air gap? There's no lintel for that. All right, well, what should I do? Well, maybe you should issue an RFI. Well, the engineer's responsive. Well, maybe you should talk to your customer then. Good luck.
Great. Now you've written a book on how to detail some plain angles.
Right. On a lintel.
On a lintel.
And the thing is that the AISC, right? Michael Buchanan's in the chat. He says maybe we should boycott the AISC. The AISC isn't supposed to be a detailing organization. They're expecting that the NISD will take that role. But they're not. They're not even, I don't think they're even capable of taking on that role based on what I've seen. So really, I mean, the only way through it is either you create a new organization, right, with modern standards. We meet online, right? We have a newsletter. We have a friggin' Twitter that every once in a while posts information that might be useful to steel detailers, right? You don't have to show up to a conference once a year and vote on things, you know, all of that stuff.
Or it's handled online.
Right. Yep. Or everybody has to show up at one of these things and say, you know what? You guys suck. You're off the board. We're going to put in some new people.
Right. So either we're going to need to rally a bunch of detailers to go in and just try to take it over, or we form the AISD and, start from scratch.
Right. And you say, okay, we're doing things. And what's the motivation, right? Try to get a detailer to write you a check on spec, right? If you start doing stuff, right, and you become useful, then I think detailers will pay for that, right?
Right. Detailers are more practical. They'll pay for results once they see the results are already happening.
Right. But they're not going to, just jump in and say, all right, well, I believe in Matt Hand. Here, Matt, here's $1,000. Go spend some time writing some documentation on how it's done.
I think my dogs are about to go off. So I'm
Yeah.
just going to mute myself momentarily. You keep going.
Well, and here's the thing too. Like we do a lot of this. Even these videos are a considerable investment of time and money, right? And we do them as a hobby, right? There's no money coming in for this channel, right? it extends our reach into, we get to have conversations with interesting people, right? And that's fantastic. That's good. We get tips from the community, and that's great. But still, I couldn't ask somebody else to do this, to spend their time. You know, I spent 4 hours last night just trying to get the freaking B-roll from one of from our old videos so that I could put the intro back together for the video that we have on. Oh God, I don't even remember what it is. And I don't know. You can't really ask that of people. You ask them to give an hour of their time here or there. Sure, they'll step up, right? If you ask them to do a specific thing. But the hard part isn't doing, it's organizing, right? It's finding 1,000 detailers who all care about the same thing, who give it. I mean, right now, I'm ranting my head off. We have 6 people who are actively listening. Now, eventually, we'll get more, and maybe 100 people will watch this video. But even 100 people, that's not a full-on community. So, and right, we talk about it constantly. Just ask detailers to leave a comment underneath a video with a question. We've produced, I think at this point, people have spent over 10,000 hours watching the different videos that we've made. We have maybe 50 comments on all of them, right?
Yep. We'll get private email conversations.
Yeah.
People just won't leave it in that public forum.
Yeah.
Now, what I have noticed, the people, the public messages, a lot of times that we do see, and this isn't all of them, but it happens quite often, is we'll get comments and questions from overseas detailers.
Yeah. I answer them.
Are they the ones with the active conversation?
Yep. I don't know. Ask the questions. I don't know.
I mean, I can't imagine that Americans are shy. That's not something we're known for.
No.
So,
No. It's definitely not. I don't understand it either.
I know we have a great fear of looking stupid, so we don't like to ask questions, I suppose. There's the whole, I'm not going to ask for directions. I'll just keep driving in circles till I figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I guess, so I'm going to, if you're still listening, I'm going to make a call to action to some of the people. We maintain a subreddit for this. Okay? It's at reddit.com/r/steel detailing. And our goal is to be able to talk to other detailers, to share information. You read a good article, you found a good piece of documentation, you found some idiosyncrasy in the OSHA guidelines that allows you to not draw cage ladders ever again.
Or you just want to point and laugh at some stupidity in contract
That's most
drawings.
of it. Honestly, the amount of times that we just get contract drawings and they're just hilariously bad, and we post it there. Just share your misery. Misery is so much better with company. It really is. It's better. And unless we engage in conversation with each other, it's not going to improve, right? Like, not to sound all union or whatever else, but if you want to improve, you gotta unite. You gotta come together and say, this is how it's gonna be now, and we're gonna work together on these things. So, I guess that's my wrapping up note for this rant episode. We'll have more coming up as soon as I can get all these videos edited and a new introduction. So, if you got questions, and I know you won't, leave them down in the comments below.
What we should just start doing is when people send us the questions privately, we should just post them ourselves into the comments section.
Or just refuse. If you want us to answer a question, you post it down below in those freaking comments, and then we'll do it. Other than that, get out of here. That's not our style, though. Everybody helps. Actually, I think I remember it's Michael Buchanan is the same guy that we did the episode that I'm trying to edit for, which is the one talking about maintaining or building those different relationships when you've had, one customer, and that you're taking a step from you just work and they just send you money up to, all right, we have to do bids, change orders,
Proper
all of that
contracts,
stuff.
things like that.
Right, and the awkward conversations and how to have some of those. So hopefully we'll get those edited appropriately.
Hey, before we kick off, I do want to read out loud just a few of the NISD sessions. See if you enjoy the pattern here. Detailing and coordinating steel deck, detailing for metal bar grating, detailing for steel joists and joist girders, successful detailing for hot dip galvanizing, the benefits of the individual detailer certification program.
There are none. I remember you told me this story. You went up and you asked them, so, why should I get certified? Well, I won't hire a certified detailer. Okay, but lots of other people will, but I won't. Okay then.
But that wasn't even a fabricator. That was a detailer. It's like, well, all right. So your detailing company won't hire detailers that aren't certified because you're on the board of the NISD. I mean, that makes sense, but
yeah,
it kind of reminds me of way back when at the AISC when they started the certification programs, and the company that we worked for at the time, they decided, oh, I'll get a monopoly on jobs because I'll be the only one in the area that's AISC certified. So they put you through all the hoops of getting them whipped into shape so that they could pass that. And then waivers, and they never got them a single job because they were AISC certified. So they just let it die.
Yep.
Now I feel like they've given that a little bit more teeth than it used to have, but
right. If I was an NISD member, right, and it came with, all right, once a month we're putting out guidance, right, just like modern steel construction, we're putting out a magazine that gives you tips and tricks how to be a better detailer, right? We answer questions for detailers, we give guidance. So if your customer says you're an idiot and you dimensioned this wrong, you send it to us as a member. We'll tell your customer you're an idiot, they're an idiot, or we'll tell you you're an idiot and do better. Either way. The AISC
they do
solution
have some sort of a publication, but I'm not positive, but I feel like it's a quarterly thing. And it looked pretty thin.
Yeah.
But I think there is something there. I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head what it is.
Yeah, I do like Jason's idea of talking about getting together just even a dozen different detailers. Put them in a Zoom meeting online. All right, what do we need? What are the steps that need to happen in order to make that exist? And let's start making some of those steps in a concrete way. Put up a website that gives guidance to detailers or whatever else.
I would love just to have a true industry standard that we could point to for all things and say, no, I followed the standards, go away.
Right. Here's a hung lintel.
Stop giving me grief about something.
This is how it's dimensioned. Here are the reasons for it. And basically, and that might be the guideline, right? That might be the thing that you sell, is a comprehensive book of, here is the way to detail 1,000 different situations.
Just a book of samples, basically.
Right. And here's how it's dimensioned. Here are the reasons why, so that a new detailer can look at it and understand why it's dimensioned that way. And the customer can say, and then you could give it as a detailer. You could give it to the customer and say, this is what I'm going to do in all 1,000 of these circumstances. If you want to change any of them in any way, put it here. Tell me how. And then that way when they come back to you and say, oh, you detailed all of your stairs to the riser line, and I like them all to be dimensioned to the back of the freaking, what's the word I'm looking
Back of
for?
the tread.
Yeah, the back of the tread. or the corner of the pitch block, because reasons. You can say, okay, but I showed you the standard. You didn't tell me to do differently, so write the check. All right, we're going to wrap this up. We will be back here with more. As always, we'll see you back here on the Steel Forum.